The next application for quadratics, we're going to look at area of a rectangle. To find the area of a rectangle, it's just length times width. Length times width, and you'll have to know that for your test. I won't give you any formulas, or you're not given any formulas on your test. So a park has a rectangular area. A rectangular area right there. So if you're talking about a park and it's a rectangular park, the area inside is 36,000 square yards. And it gives us some information. It says the width means equals, so we could say the width, call it W, is 60 yards more than twice the length. Find the dimensions of the lot. When they ask you for dimensions, they're asking you for width and length. Okay, so if we go back up and read, we know something about the width in terms of the length. We know that the width is 60 yards more than twice the length, but we don't know anything about the length. And it really doesn't matter which one you label width and which one you label length. So I'm going to call this part down here length. I don't know anything about it, so I'm going to call it L. And if you want to call it X, have at it, doesn't matter. I do know that the width is 60 yards more than twice the length. So if this is my width right here, I could write it as 60 more than, so that's plus 60, more than twice the length. So I can write my width as 2L plus 60. And then I know my area. So my goal is to solve for L. If I can solve for L, then I know the length. Then I can plug L in to find the width. Okay, so let's set up our equation, and then the solving will be what we've been doing, a little bit bigger numbers. Okay, so my area is length times width. I know my area is 36,000. My length is just L, call it X if you want, times my width, which is 2L plus 60. Okay, so I'm down to this equation. I have parentheses, so the first thing I have to do is distribute. So I have 36,000 on the left. 2L times L will be 2L squared plus 60L. Okay, I have a variable squared, so I know that I have a quadratic. These are a little bit different than the ones before because I have an L squared and an L, or if you're using X, an X squared and an X. So I can't just get my L squared alone and square root it. I'm either going to have to factor or use the quadratic formula. And in either case, for both of those, one side has to be 0. So I'm going to keep this L squared over here positive, and I'm going to subtract 36,000. And that's going to give me 0 on the left, and if I subtract 36,000 on the right, it gets subtracted off the end because I can't put it with something with an L. So I have 0 equals 2L squared plus 60L minus 36,000. Now, you can either use quadratic formula. A lot of people, once you know quadratic formula, would prefer that. Or on most of these, they will be able to factor. They'll be a little bit bigger numbers than normal. But one thing I want you to notice is that number 1, I have an equation. Number 2, each of these terms on the right-hand side could be divided by 2. So rather than factor a 2 out, I'm going to divide all my coefficients by 2, and if I do it on the right, I have to do it on the left. So you can only do that if there's an equal sign. 0 divided by 2 is 0. 2 divided by 2 just leaves me L squared plus 30L minus 18,000. Now, 18,000 is still a really big number. So if you want to go over and use quadratic formula, go for it. If you want to come over here and factor, go for it. Be a good idea to pause the video for a second, go to the side and see if you can get it factored. Once you have it factored, it should factor to L plus 150 and L minus 120. So big numbers. Okay, once we factor it, remember we set each factor equal to 0. So I'm going to kind of come over here to the left. I have L plus 150 equals 0. Subtract 150. So L is negative 150. Who does L represent? The length. Can you have a negative length? No. So this negative 150, we're actually not even going to take. So this L minus 120 is the other one. If I add 120 to both sides, I get L equals 120. Okay, so my length, based on that, is 120. Be sure you include units. When I say units, I'm talking yards, feet, inches, so forth. And if my length is 120 yards, can I find my width? So if my length is 120, I'm going to plug that back in up here to my width to find my width. So my width is going to be 2 times my length of 120 plus 60, which gives me 300 yards. Okay, now on this, how could you check yourself? If the length is 120 and the width is 300 and the area is 36,000, I should be able to multiply the length and the width together to get my 36,000. So you could check it and see if that actually works.